Did you know that you should take some lessons from Hollywood for your next launch? Well, that's what we're doing today on the Before the Launch podcast. Hello, I am your host, Brenna McGowan. I'm a copywriter, launch strategist, and pre launch expert. And today we are going to be breaking down why your next launch needs to take some cues from Hollywood. Now, we're just coming off at the time I'm recording this. There's been some big launches in the last month. We have Taylor Swift, who announced her new album. We have Alex Hormozi, who just had, I think, the biggest book launch of all times. And I personally have not followed either one of these people too closely, so I'm not going to speak directly to their launches. But the one thing that I do know each one of them did is each one of them pre-launched. And why do they pre-launch? Well, it's because they know that pre-launching helps you increase your launch revenue. They know that they are actually pre-selling ahead of time. Both Alex Hormozi and Taylor Swift were selling ahead of time before their actual launch date. And if I'm correct, Taylor Swift doesn't even officially launch her album until October. But I bet you she already has a very, very large list of buyers ready to pounce on that album the moment it comes out. And the other thing that they did is that they know who their perfect fit clients are. So they were actually going ahead and putting out the type of content, the type of hints that would get the right people excited. And last but not least, both of them, and well, I shouldn't speak for them, but I'm going to guess that both of their launches aren't going to be so stressed because neither Alex or Taylor are going, oh my gosh, is anyone going to buy on launch day? No, they have already pre-sold tickets, pre-sold albums, pre-sold books, pre-sold all of the things. And this is why pre-launching is so important. And today I want to break down what Hollywood does and continues to do and how you can emulate this in your next launch. So the first thing is Hollywood doesn't just, and I'm going to speak specifically about movies here. You don't find out about a movie coming out the day that it comes out on box office day, right? No, they are promoting movies heavily ahead of time. 120 days ahead of time is the average where you start seeing trailers for movies. So I want you to think about it. That's 4 months that they are hinting to letting you know something is coming before it ever even happens. And this is because they know that building up anticipation, creating buzz, and getting buy-in early is so important because the way it works in Hollywood now is that if you are making huge sales on box office open day and week, they can pretty much determine how successful your movie is going to be based on those stats alone. And the way that they get those numbers, those stats, is by creating an incredible pre-launch ahead of time. So as I mentioned, that they create buzz. And one of the way that they do this is that they create trailers, right? They start creating little glimpses of what you're going to see inside the movie before it ever happens. And they do this by creating open loops. And what I show my students inside the pre-launch plan program is exactly this. Like, how can you start to create these little open loops, this buzz that is going to get people curious and leaning in? So there's something called the information gap theory. And the information gap theory basically says that there's a connection between what we want to know and what we don't know. And when there's something that we don't know, our brain and the way that we're wired, we hate to not know information. So when we don't know something in completion, our brains are actually wired to want to close that loop. And not only are we wired to want to close that loop, we actually remember things better by those open loops actually happening. So through an open loop, when someone doesn't close a loop immediately, it creates this little, like I call it like a corner of your brain. And there's actually science behind this, that it creates it where you will remember things better that are not completed. And this is what a movie trailer does. Not only is it built to give you a heads up and build a little buzz and momentum, but you may not even realize it. When a movie trailer is done well, it leaves these little open loops where you're like, wait, what happened? Like, what happened? What's going to happen in this movie? And we have to know what it is. This summer, my daughter and I love to watch The Summer I Turned Pretty. And their promotion on Instagram alone was such a beautiful job of not only, like I said, creating buzz, but creating these open loops where if you've watched it, you're going, wait, does Belly choose Conrad or does she choose Jeremiah? And you're very intrigued. And the little hints that they dropped, the little trailers, if you will, commercials, giving these little hints, they keep you intrigued. Now, you might be like, okay, that's great for Hollywood, but how do I do this for my business? Well, this is something that we talk about inside the pre-launch plan program. And if you're listening to this, we're actually opening doors September 17th. And I would love for you to take a look at it. Join me. You could go to does anyone even say that anymore? But we'll say go to brendamcgowan.co/PPP. That's 3 as in Peter in a row. And take a look at this because these are the kind of things that we do inside of the program and the kind of results like Susan Rioch, when she started to create these open loops and creating this buzz and momentum before her launch even started, she tripled her launch results and has every time she has launched the same program has increased her results. And that's because she knows what I'm telling you right now, which is creating open loops and buzz and creating curiosity before you ever launch, just like Hollywood does, gets people curious and leaning in. The other thing that these trailers do that the movies, or inside the movies that they do, is it actually positions them in the market. So I want you to think about when you have gone to the movies and you're watching a trailer, right? They are showing you trailers for similar types of movies that you might be interested in the future most of the time, right? And that is because they know whoever's sitting in that movie theater, the type of movies that they already like based on where they're sitting. And they're putting future opportunities for sale in front of that audience because they know that this audience is someone who enjoys movies, who's going to go. So I want you to think about that in terms of your launch. Now, I mentioned Taylor Swift and Alex Hormozi, and even though these are people that I know of in the world and the online space, I don't actually follow any of these two individuals directly. It's probably because I'm not their perfect fit buyer, if you will. But they knew that the type of content they put out, if they positioned it correctly, that they would be calling in the people that are already in their audience and get them to buy, but also be adding on new people. So I want you to think about that as well as during your pre-launch. How can you get in front of audiences that you know are already proven to buy during the pre-launch period? Where are these people at that you can start generating the buzz and creating little trailers for your program and making mentions of? And so the thing that's so important here when we're talking about Hollywood is that they were able to increase sales without actually even, I guess the book launch would be the exception to this. But if you think about Taylor Swift, she's increasing her sales even though she hasn't seen a dime of revenue yet. Same thing with a movie. They know they're increasing their sales even though they haven't actually made a sale. But they know by creating trailers and creating this buzz that they're actually getting people to buy in early. And this is why it's so important with your launches, with your courses, your programs, your services, whatever it is, that thing that you're going to sell, is that when you can start to let people know early what's coming up and what they can expect, then all of a sudden they know that they might want to save up money. I have a lot of people that will tell me, okay, when are you launching the pre-launch plan program again? I want to make sure that I start saving up now. So think about that, is that when you are pre-launching, you are creating a list of buyers early on, even though someone hasn't technically purchased yet. Although do not fall with me saying that. I really think it's important to say this is also, and we'll link, I did an episode about waitlist a little while back. We'll link it here below. is that you also don't want to rely solely on a wait list and thinking that those people are buyers. And go listen to that episode all about wait lists, and you'll hear more of what I'm talking about. So I want you to think about going into your next launch, right? If you are someone who wants to create more buzz, if you are someone who wants people excited, if you want to increase your sales, you want to pre-sell seats, you want to start calling in better fit type of clients, you want to take some of the launch and pressure off of your next launch period, I want you to consider joining me in the pre-launch plan program. So doors open, like I said, on September 17th. And a great example of this is with my friend and mentor, Laura Belgrade. I actually consulted with her on a pre-launch, and she was launching her shrimp club in August of this year. And back in the spring, we started to talk about it. And she was saying like, oh, that she loves to do shrimp club, but sometimes coming back from summer and having to sell off the bat, there's a lot going on. And when I had recommended to Laura, I'm like, why don't you do a pre-launch? Why don't you try and sell shrimp club early, way ahead of your actual launch period, your official doors opening in August? Why don't we try and pre-sell and see what could happen? And what ended up happening with Laura is that she pre-sold in the spring 55%. And then just through the direction that I'd given her and the type of content she was putting out, before she officially opened her doors, she was 80% sold out of her program before anything actually officially launched. And that is because of the principles that we're talking about today on this episode. So if you're someone who's like, yes, I want more of this, keep your eyes open. The pre-launch plan program opens September 17th. If you want to chat with me about it, and you can always hit me up at Brennan McGowan Co. on Instagram, and I can let you know if I think it's a good fit. But if this is what you want more in your business, like, keep in mind, there's a reason why Hollywood does what it does and why it creates buzz and starts talking about their movies months and months ahead of time. And that being said, just because you're talking about something months and months ahead of time does not mean that there has to be a lot of pressure. And it doesn't mean that you're creating endless content around your offer. And those are the kinds of things I show you inside the pre-launch plan program. Keep your eyes out for doors opening, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.